So this morning, what I wanted to do was talk about inside marketing. And I'm in the world of online marketing, and I talk to a lot of docs with goals to grow their practice. But I always look at marketing from four standpoints. There's inside organic marketing, there's inside paid marketing, there's outside organic marketing, and then there's outside paid marketing. Today we're going to be talking about the inside stuff that you can do just naturally without spending a cent. And there's other stuff that you can do by putting a little bit of money into it inside your office that can really grow your office. And I feel for somebody to really grow their office and sustain a healthy, strong practice, you have to look at it from all these four different angles. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I got a lot of gems for you guys this morning. Inside marketing. And the whole goal of this is to create consistent growth. And this is something that my team and I talked about all the time. And one thing that we did, and this was, I think, the foundation for our success, is that every single week we had what we called a perfect repeatable week. Every week we made sure we did huddles before every shift, and we were prepared for the huddles. So in other words, everybody had a responsibility for what they brought to the huddle. It's not like we just showed up. So it's one thing to say, yes, let's have a huddle, and then we'll talk about the day sheet and who's coming in. But then the next level is actually to prepare for that huddle, and everybody has responsibility. So we had one person to bring the complete marketing sheet. So that was all the leads and every single new patient that came in for the current month and the previous month. And we would go over anybody who needed extra attention. So we would go over these things in huddle, but we were prepared. My job was to bring something inspirational to every huddle. So I prepared the day before, the night before, whatever. I had a list of things that I would bring. And sometimes it was a Bible quote, sometimes it was a story, sometimes it was a side effect of a medication or a tragedy that somebody had in the medical world. Sometimes it was a green book or an epigram quote, or maybe it was a testimonial, but it was something positive for the team every single huddle. That was my job. So we had these perfect repeatable weeks. And one of the things we did was we had our training session. So we did a training every week, and we had our staff meeting every week. But these were all set in stone. They could not be missed. Everybody was supposed to be there. We had incentives for them to be there, and actually consequences if they weren't there. So everybody knew this was very, very important. So that's one of the things that we put in place right off the bat. So one of the things that we talked about in the office was how to stimulate referrals. Now, obviously, everybody wants referrals, and this is really the best source of marketing, because when you get a referral patient, especially if it's from a good patient, that good patient has already pre-qualified them. They've asked all the questions, like how often do you go? How did it start? What did they do the first day? What did it cost? All the little details that people ask or are uncertain of. So by the time that referral patient comes in, they're ready to start. Like they already know. And typically a referral patient is going to turn into a good patient. So that's really important to have a process to attract referrals. So this is absolutely the best source of marketing. It attracts qualified people. But here's the thing. People don't know how to refer. So we have to stimulate them to think about the people that need to be referred, and we have to give them a means or some sort of direction for them to be able to refer those people into your office. So we always started with the staff. And so one of the things that we talked about at our staff meeting was our staff's family. And I was actively, and my wife was very, very good at this, actively involved in what's going on with their family. How are they doing? What are they, as far as their kids, what level are they at in school? What are they doing in their sports? She wanted to know everything that's going on in their family. And we communicated that very regularly because that always opened the door for us to really encourage that they keep on track with their chiropractic care. So our staff were the best and most important patients in our office. So we want to make sure that their chiropractic care was well looked after and well taken care of, so that therefore they could be an advocate for everybody else. And we taught them how to refer. I remember having a conversation with Rob Schiffman, and for those of you who don't know Rob has a practice in South Bend, Indiana, and has been in practice for probably close to 40 years now. And Rob is the busiest chiropractor in the history of the profession. Typically saw an average of 3,000 patient visits per week. He still practices now, still sees ridiculously high volume. And I know some of you can't even comprehend that. When you think 3,000 visits per week, single doc seeing 3,000 visits per week, you can't comprehend it until you actually have it explained or paint a vision of it in your mind. But keep in mind, he is spending no more than 15 to 20 seconds with each person. So there needs to be some level of education. And I got this from him, is that when we were talking about staff, because I used to get direct one-on-one coaching from Rob, and we talked about staff, and he said the number one criteria for staff is, do they refer? And that was his main thing. Do they refer? So, do they know chiropractic enough to refer regularly to the office? So, we always had this thing in the office that we said family was first. So, we always practiced and went over systems to make sure we were very much involved at getting the family in. So we always talked about the family. So that involved on the first day finding out with a new patient, what is their family? Like, do they have a spouse? What's the spouse's name? Do they have kids? How old are their kids? What are the names of their kids? What are the kids involved in? So the staff would strategically ask these questions because it created trust, it created a relationship, but then it also gave us the leverage to suggest to them or encourage them or insist that their family get in and get checked. So we had this system to check the family. And it was always after day 3 when we did our doctor's report, it was a requirement for people to be patients of our office to at least have their family checked. And we removed all the barriers. It was completely free in the first 2 weeks. So there was no reason they couldn't bring their family in to get checked. But I said, if I did this for my own kids, why wouldn't I suggest this for my patients? So we practiced that system to have our family checked. And I always said to the staff, and I've said to many of you guys, is that I look at every new patient as 4 new patients. So if the average family is 4 people, husband, wife, 2 kids, then every person is 4 new patients. So we always talked about that during our meetings. We talked about that during our huddles. It was very common conversation. And then in the report of findings, or when we showed the person their x-rays, obviously that time was about them. But once they answered the questions, once they understood their concern, once they understood that they had subluxation, they needed chiropractic care, and then they committed to some sort of a care plan or care, the next question was, when you were sitting through that doctor's report or when you're looking at your x-rays, who crossed your mind? Who crossed your mind with your kid? And ultimately, so like, who has the same types of problems? Because we always went over examples of people who had all kinds of organic type of problems, not just musculoskeletal problems, but organic illnesses or diseases that were helped by chiropractic care, by removing interference from the nervous system. So it's going to trigger somebody in their mind. Oh my gosh, my uncle has severe chronic congestive heart failure. Wow. And if we got him under a course of chiropractic care and a proper nutrition program, could that help? Absolutely. Like, so so then the next step would be, can we give you a gift certificate to give your uncle? Or can we potentially set up a 3-way text message with the doctor? So if you can set up a text message, here's the doctor's number, include your uncle on this thread, and that'll give the introduction. So we could do it that way. Or we could pre-frame a phone call. You go talk to your uncle, say, hey, I just met this doctor that's talking about congestive heart failure and being able to get off your medications and help your body heal by removing the interference and all this. Potentially, would you like to get on a call with the doctor? And pre-frame the call, and then we would communicate with the patient. When that's done, then set up a phone call with that person. So there was always ways to do that. Every single new patient got a gift certificate or a number of gift certificates to pass out to their friends because we always talked about mission. And one of my big things was the fact that people are inundated by medical philosophy. They sit at home, they don't do anything for their health, they take medications, drugs, they're in line for surgery, they're getting injections, they're taking vaccines, they're vaccinating their kids, they do all these things, and they don't think about proactive approaches to health, and they know nothing about how chiropractic care can help them get there. So that was something that we constantly gave out to people, and we had them at every single adjusting table. We gave them out to every single new patient all the time. That was a regular thing. So we always had hundreds of gift certificates ready in the office to stimulate referrals. And then here's another tip too that worked really well. We had a medication container for empty medication bottles. So people that were able to regain their health, get off their medications, we encouraged them to bring their empty medication bottles into the office. Some people brought full bottles in, but we would throw them in this container, and it was a clear container. So people would see all the empty medication bottles and say, hey, what's that? Well, that's all these people that have got off their medication. So we would often have a flyer with the medication of the month. Well, you know that there's thousands and thousands of people in your community that are taking cholesterol medication. They're taking beta blockers. They're taking proton pump inhibitors for gastric reflux. They're taking antidepressants. They might be on some sort of hormonal medications or thyroid medications because they're chronically fatigued. So we always had a medication flyer, and we would typically change it sometimes every week. Sometimes if it was a popular one, we would leave it out for the entire month. But that again would stimulate people thinking, because everybody knows somebody, a neighbor, a family member, that's taking a lot of medications. And if that can be the stimulus to say, hey, there's another answer, wow, that creates a lot of referrals. So I want to ask you guys, is there something strategically that you're doing that stimulates more referrals?
Well, the big thing I would say is like when you're looking at internal. So I love internal the most because it's what you have control over. It's the other pieces I don't feel that you have direct control over unless you are a marketer yourself. But the internal you absolutely do. And whatever you're doing, whether, some of the things that Colin's going to get into here, workshops, dinners, the beginning of this, the only way people are going to refer is if they understand what chiropractic is, right? Like you're not going to build a practice just on marketing, just on advertising, just on a procedure, or just on a technique. It's going to come from building um, a warrior of patients that understand what chiropractic is. So through your procedures, through your talks, through your table conversation, through how like you and your team interact with patients inside the office, like your people need to understand what chiropractic is. They need to understand why it works. They need to understand what we do and also why we don't do some of the things we don't do. Without that stuff and without this weaved into what like a visit looks like in your office, the procedures like in your office, you're not going to be able to build a good referral base. You're not going to be able to build warriors that are looking to bring people or looking to stick around for a long time. So as putting as an overarching theme, this is what you want to be thinking about. And I talk a lot of my associates about this, like what does that table talk look like? Is this is that concept, is that process, that thought pattern in your table talk? Is that in your what your front desk is talking about? Is that in your workshops? Is that in your dinners, in the referral process? Is that in, your re-exams, etc.?
So this is the biggest thing is being unique in your community. And there's so many chiropractors in your community that just treat pain. And if you can get your office into a position where you have every single procedure in place to help educate people that there's so much more to chiropractic than just the treatment of symptoms, you immediately make yourself unique. And when you make yourself unique, you attract a whole new audience that wants that. Let's go on to the next one. So inside talks, and we talked about having the perfect repeatable week. This was part of our perfect repeatable month. So every single month we set up a regular nutrition talk. And why nutrition talk? Well, people don't want to come to a chiropractic talk. That's not a catchy thing. Like you're not going to get a lot of people wanting to come out and hear about chiropractic. You just not. You just won't do that. So we created these nutrition talks that wove in the principle of chiropractic. And we had some really fancy titles for them. So we had a talk on weight loss resistance. We had a talk on your unhappy hormones. Are you tired of chronic fatigue? We had a whole bunch of other different talks, but essentially it was the same talk with obviously some subtle differences or different stories, different studies, and so on. But the principle of the talk was the same. And it always wove in the principle of having a properly functioning nervous system. And we always had an offer at the end of the talk. So the talk drove people in. We had a weight loss program, a nutrition program. You could have a life coaching program. And all of those programs included a chiropractic evaluation. So we had these people bringing friends to this weight loss talk or your unhappy hormone talk who were not patients of the office. They got introduced to us, our team. They got a tour of the office. They got to see what was it all about. And then we gave them an offer to come in to have their body fat checked and go through a nutritional program. And we talk about getting their nervous system checked or maybe doing an x-ray. And the majority of them would say, yes, let's do that. And eventually they would become chiropractic patients. So it was a great way to keep feeding that new patient flow from a very organic perspective. And we did that every single month. It happened the third Thursday of every month, 7 o'clock, like solid yellow lines around it. We never missed it. So, and then everybody knew when it was. So people would ask, when's the next nutrition talk? Oh, it's the third Thursday of the month. That happens to be the 18th. So here we are. So we often had a guest speaker come in and we tried to affiliate with that guest speaker. So I would prepare the guest speaker as to say, okay, what are we trying to accomplish here? And we would either have some sort of a joint program together or we would have a joint talk. So I would weave in. We had wealth management people come in. We had somebody from the sleep lab come in and talk about sleep apnea machines. We had a naturopath come in. We had a yoga studio owner come in that talked about mindfulness. But it was all part of a joint talk to talk about the principle of chiropractic and keeping yourself well from the inside out. Okay. So that was the whole purpose of it, was to make sure that everybody was understanding the principle. And we sometimes would create a partnership offer with some of these, like for instance, the healthcare workers, like the sleep lab people. We had some sort of an affiliate program, or the naturopath, we had some sort of an affiliate program to work with them. The next thing, you want to create energy. So you want to do things in your office that really create this vibrational energy. So we would often do patient appreciation days, or kids days were very big. So we did kids days quite often because that would bring families. And if our goal was to see families, this was a great way to do it. So I can tell you a few things we did. We had, especially summertime, barbecues, and we would hire a clown. We got the reptile guy to come in, and he brought a whole bunch of different reptiles, snakes and all kinds of spiders like tarantulas and iguanas and all kinds of stuff. And we marketed it and advertised it like crazy for about a month to 6 weeks beforehand. We had a magician come in. Sometimes we'd bring in live entertainment, like if it was a patient who played guitar or something and sang, we'd bring them in. We provided food or refreshments. We did have a barbecue. We had door prizes. So especially if it's a kids' day, we had kids' door prizes. I remember we gave away, it was a Sony PlayStation, one year, and we advertised that. So that would bring out a lot of people as well. We had a video game challenge. So we had a big screen TV and a video game challenge during that time as well. So people could come and play video games or compete against each other we had a local mascot. So if you have a sports team that has a local mascot, that, dresses up and goes to all their games, like it's a hockey team with a mascot or a baseball team, whatever, you call the team, you create a partnership, and very often they'll allow the local mascot to come on site and be there, especially if it's a kid's day. You can call the police department or fire department and tell them what you're trying to accomplish. It's just a community event. You're inviting a lot of kids and families out, and they love getting involved in that stuff. So they often would bring a police car or a fire truck for the kids to climb in and tour, and sometimes the police would turn on the sirens or the lights and whatnot for the kids there. They would also do a child fingerprint program where they would actually fingerprint the kids that came just to get IDs. So then they could identify, for missing children. So that was a really beneficial and helpful program. But we marketed that. It was, again, that was another draw. And then for every one of these events, we did a kids posture screening. We did a backpack screening. We put them on the bilateral scales. We had a SAM unit. We'd check their posture. We'd show mom and dad the fact that their shoulders are unlevel or their pelvis is unlevel. And then we'd set up time to get an x-ray for them. And we literally signed up families during that event. In fact, we had somebody in the back actually getting them set up to actually take x-rays. And then one of our associate docs would be in there taking x-rays during that event. We would often have an event like that, like a patient appreciation day, and do weight and body fat analysis with the Tanita scale. So they would actually stand on the weight and body fat analysis. We would do a little pre-frame and screening and say, this is what we would hope to expect. And then we'd show them the results. And then that would get them into a nutrition program and ultimately a chiropractic program. So this is the big thing, and this is what I really want to impress upon you guys, is that, we would always talk about this in our meetings, saying we wanted a perfect repeatable week, a perfect repeatable month, a perfect repeatable quarter, and we had certain things that we wanted to make sure got implemented into that perfect repeatable month, into that perfect repeatable quarter, because we were reverse engineering it. And we said, okay, if we wanted to reach a certain volume in our clinic, that means we had to have so many new patients. And if we could say to get this many new patients, we had to have this many events. Therefore, we reverse engineered it and say, okay, we need to put this many events in to predictably attract this many new patients. So it was really a strategic formula. It did not happen by accident. So that's one of the things that we constantly talked about during our staff meetings. And that's why I said our staff meetings were written in stone. So you can see when you look at it that way, it just becomes very logical. It's not like chiropractors that build a very successful practice or $1 million practice. It doesn't happen by accident. It's not like they have they're in a certain part of your town. It's not like they have a certain charisma or something like that. No, it's done very logically. It's a business decision. So this is why we have to really come down to it and say, okay, how do we reverse engineer what we're trying to create and put these things in place? Next one, patient dinners. So I know a couple of you on the line ran a very successful patient dinner program. This is something we did for years. And we just had, again, this is part of our perfect repeatable month. We had a patient dinner every single month. We found a restaurant that had a private room that could have potentially up to 30 people in the room. And we just basically said, we're doing this every month. And we arranged a menu with them. We made sure that they had enough servers for the number of people that were there. It was non-alcohol. We had a very specific menu, so people weren't ordering off the general menu. We had a very specific menu. We arranged a price for that menu. So it was, again, very strategic. And we would invite every single new patient out to these dinners every month. So it was an ongoing thing. It was part of our regular routine, day 1, day 2, day 3. On day 3, people got basically registered at the front desk when they signed up for their care plan after they saw their x-rays, after they were at doctor's report. And the staff knew that their job at that point was to book their kids for their exam. That was part of the plan, and to set them up for the next dinner. So, and they would get that invitation. And then the dinner, they would be encouraged to bring their spouse or a partner or a friend. And we would never limit the number of people they could bring. If they wanted to bring 3 friends and their spouse, fantastic, great. So we would bring them out to the dinner, and the dinner was the time that really we're not there to sell anybody on anything. We're there to share our vision. That was the time that we had as an office to share our heart. This is why we do what we do. And we would talk about our community, and we talk about some of the tragedies that are happening in our community, some of the medical mishaps that are happening in our community, and we wanted to give people a sense of hope that we were the light. We were the guiding light in this community. And we wanted more and more people to understand what we knew about the principle of chiropractic. And I would share the principle. And we would talk about the fact that the body has this incredible ability to heal. And if people knew what we knew, they would do what we do. So we would just share that vision, and people would get so inspired, and many of them would get up and share a testimonial, and they may have only been in our office for a week, and they would get up and share something amazing, because this is the time it creates this level of love and reciprocity. When you're at a dinner buying them dinner, they want to give back to you, and they do so with love and compliments and affirmations. So we had often we had an affiliate warrior patient, and I remember exactly the person, and she came to many of them. Heather was her name. She was an incredible patient for years. She insisted that she was there 2 times a week for years, 2 times a week, every single week for years. And she just loved chiropractic. That was her be all and end all. She was a big part of her office. She would come to a lot of the dinners. She would get up and just share her story and her love. And she was a great testimonial. And we often incentivized her to do that. I mean, she was just such a blessing. We had this private room in a restaurant, and again, it was all about just teaching the principle, how it's affected our personal lives, and also teach them how to refer, because that was part of the conversation at the dinner. Is that so? You're probably thinking about your child's teacher, or there's somebody in your neighborhood, or there's somebody at your church, or maybe on one of your sports teams that's had some sort of a problem, or that's taking medication, or that's on chronic painkillers, or that has children with some sort of neurological problem or whatever that is, and that would give them the inspiration to refer those people into the office too. And then we would ask them for opportunities. Is there a place that we can come and share this mission with others? Maybe at your work, can we come and do a lunch and learn? Do you have a support group, or do you have a sports team that would love a speaker? You're part of Rotary or Kiwanis. And we set up so many talks just by sharing that with people at the dinner of well, because there's this law of reciprocity. And this law of reciprocity states that when you do something good for somebody, there's this innate sense that they want to do something good back for you. I said to somebody on the phone I was coaching the other day, and I said, we were talking about how often do you care for people who can't afford your care? And I said, my question was, is your day from start to finish full with full paying patients? Or are there times where you're standing around waiting for people? He goes, oh no, there's lots of times where I'm standing around waiting for people. I said, so wouldn't it be in the world's best interest for you to give some sort of a charitable work in that time where you can actually save a life or transform a life? And let's look at this from a spiritual sense. God looks favorably on that. And when you give, the window that you give through is proportional to the window that you receive through. So when you start doing things like that, it all comes back to you multiple fold. So that's the patient dinner program, and then the next one is community dinners. And this is where, we did patient dinners for many years, had such great success, but they just kept getting bigger and bigger. So finally, we just decided to do a community dinner, and this was our idea, basically giving back to the community. Essentially, that's what it was. And so we decided we did this originally. We did it every 6 weeks, and then we extended it to once every 8 weeks. So this was part of our perfect repeatable quarter. So every single month, we were either planning for the next dinner that was coming up next month, or we were in the month of the dinner and we were getting ready to launch the dinner. So this was a regular piece of the conversation. And the community dinner, essentially what we did is we planned a wedding. We used to call this the Italian wedding dinner. And we had dinners, the average dinner was 250 people. We had numbers of up to 350 people coming out, because our team just got really good at promoting this, because we just talked about it all the time. And when we would talk about the dinner, we would encourage people to reserve an entire table and fill up the table. And we had round tables of 10 to 12 people. and they could reserve an entire table, but they'd have to fill it up. So people would literally, we had patients bringing 10 guests to the dinner. It was incredible. And at the dinner, we did an advanced talk. So that was a big driver to the dinner. So it might have been a talk on heart disease or natural ways to combat cholesterol or natural ways to treat cancer. So these were really catchy talks, and we had a lot of people come out to them just to hear the message. And it was always based around the principle of chiropractic. So we did this advanced talk at the dinner, we had the buffet, and I mean, we can set up another call to go through this. But I would say for those of you who do dinners, this is the next best step. It's a great way to create energy in your office, give your team a sense of purpose. Because we literally, it was like an internal competition to beat the number of people that we had at the last dinner for the next dinner. So it became a lot of fun. And we marketed it internally, we marketed it externally, we partnered with different groups. We would literally call the mayor. We had the mayor out at one of our dinners. We would partner with all kinds of different businesses. Made it like a health fair. So we had natural vendors come out to our dinner to set up a booth where they could, share their story with a lot of the people that were there. And we gave people a chance to mingle and go and talk to those people as well. So we really had this team challenge of making this big. And ultimately, every single dinner, we'd come out of it with 40, 50, sometimes up to 90 new patients after a dinner. We'd be booked out for the next 2 to 3 weeks with new patients. So it was a lot of fun. And here's another thing. So the last thing, and I think this is my last slide here, is that the bottom line is that for you to stimulate growth in your office and people wanting to stay, you want to practice that people just love to stay at. Think of your office as a church. And if you've ever gone to church or been part of a church, let's think of it on one end of the spectrum where you've gone to a church that's incredibly boring. You go to the church, it's the same sermon over and over again, right? The service is the same all the time, and there's no extra events. Like they don't have any special events. They don't have church picnics. They don't have church outings. They don't have any type of social events or support groups or anything like that. You don't stay. Like people don't stay at a church like that. Even though some people are very dedicated Christian people or whatever your faith is, you don't stay at an organization that doesn't create the energy or doesn't give you a reason to keep coming. So we always thought of our practice as this is our church. Our message is the principle of chiropractic, and we want to create this energy and culture in our office that people just want to be there. They don't want to just come for their adjustments. They just want to come because we have this incredible positive vibration and energy in our clinic. So a clinic with greater vibrational energy is a clinic that want to come to, bring others, and stay with. So this is our church. And this is the big thing for your team. If your team is bored or burned out or overwhelmed, it's because you don't have these systems in place. Because a team with a purpose in a busy office, that's a team that gets excited. There's a difference between being busy and excited versus being busy and overwhelmed. Is a huge difference. And the team that is busy and excited is a team that stays with you for a lifetime.